Hello, Playdate. This is Nick.
And boopity boop 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 in my way back into your heart. It's Ryan.
This week we're covering Playdate news.
Indie games of the week.
And thanks for listening. Let's get started. Ryan, welcome back.
Nick, thanks for having me back. I feel like we are in very different energy levels right now. Let's get you psyched up. Are you ready for this?
Oh, I'm super psyched, as you know. So Don, unfortunately, isn't with us this episode, but
this is true. That'll
Ryan's
bring me back down.
Got enough energy for both of us, so that works out. So Ryan, I'm looking at the news and notes, and
we've got some boopity boop 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 news and notes, and
this first one was added by Ryan. I'm just
I don't know what you're talking about, but anyway, we're talking about news and notes, and we are recording on election day, and I would like to bring up the vote no on Proposition Anti-Boop, because there was some boop suppression while I was gone, and I want to make an apology to Dylan Ledbetter. A couple episodes ago, I heard him try out a boop, and I heard one of the hosts, I'm not going to name names, but he's not here today. I wish he was, because I would then name a name, but I heard boop suppression, and it made me very sad, because this is a safe space for all, no matter race, color, creed, orientation, boopness, whatever you are welcome here in the Hello Playdate podcast. So, Dylan, when you come back and return to the Hello Playdate podcast, I will ensure that this is a safe booping space. And I want to thank you to George Banks for his involuntary boop. It was so natural. It just came out. So George, thank you for your boops in my absence. I really appreciated it. And I think that's it for that PSA.
Yeah, well, I want to say thank you to George Banks from Fat Nose Games for coming on last episode and talking about his new game, Along Came a Spider. So Ryan, what is this third item here?
Well, before we get to the third boopity boop boop news and note, I wanted to touch base on your news and note of thanks to George Banks. I listened to that entire episode. I listened to all the episodes while I was gone, and it was such a pleasure listening to George from front to back of that episode. First of all, he's just so disarmingly British, and I thought, oh man, I'm never even going to be able to come back on the show now that he's been on here. But then, like, listening through to the end when you guys were doing some spoiler talk, he was such a giddy schoolboy when you guys were talking about his game, and it just gave me so much joy to hear his pleasure in discussing this thing that he spent hours and hours and weeks and months making with somebody who had obviously spent a good deal of time on it. So George Banks, you are aces in my book, and welcome back anytime. Thank you for coming on and filling my very small shoes in my absence. So I can't wait to get to Along Came a Spider. I have still not played it yet. But I'm looking real forward to it.
It's amazing, and yeah, thank you, George, for putting up with all the technical difficulties that we had last episode. It was a storm of technical difficulties that night, but very much appreciated.
All right, so for our third news and note, there is a fellow named Bobby Telltale Heart who created a light accessory for the Playdate so that you can play it in low light conditions. This looked like sort of a 3D printed part, but then also wired in an LED light that sort of hinges up into place. Really cool idea. He even ended this little social media video by saying, "Hey, Panic, if you're interested, not, I'll sell it." He was like, "Hey, I'll just give this to you if you're interested, Panic." So I thought that was very cool of him to showcase that and put that out into the public. We will include a link to the Twitter post made by him. It seemed to be a TikTok repost or something to that effect. But regardless, a cool thing happened, and we will have a link to that in the show notes for today's episode.
Sounds good.
Did you get a
So
look at that, Nick? Did you have any thoughts about that light accessory?
I saw an image of it. That's as far as I got. Um,
Okay.
so if it's, I'm trying to load it now slowly.
This is going to make for great podcasting, which means we are done with news and notes and on to boop 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 boopity boop indie inventory.
Yes. So it loaded in. It was not a photo of the thing. So yeah. Indie inventory. We just pick out a few quick hit games that have released in the last fortnight and talk about those and maybe why we found them interesting. So the first game that I wanted to highlight is called Nom Nom, and it is made by the Russian Bear game. And it is very reminiscent of Montezuma's Revenge, which is a kind of classic bar top game that's been ported to the DS and Game Boy Advance and every platform under the sun, and now the Playdate. So if you're familiar with that game, it's like a match 3, but with a interesting spiral timed element. So worth a look.
Very cool. I was not familiar with this game, but now I am, thanks to you. Looks like it was a $2 price tag on that one.
Yep. So the next one, I just thought this was an interesting little application. It's called Polygon Wanaland for Playdate, and it is actually a full album, which was released to the public domain by a group called King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, which, as I understand it, is like a jam band of some kind. But at any rate, the whole thing is a pretty polished package. You can scroll through the lyrics with the crank, and there's an album art viewer, so you can view the 1-bit album artwork up close and personal. Just a pretty neat application, and pretty cool of them to release that in the public domain.
Excellent. I saw that in the list of itch titles. Have not downloaded, nor have I pressed play on the album.
I haven't either, but it's there when we have time. And the last one that I wanted to highlight is called Grimoire, and that's free, and it's billed as a Minesweeper-like game. The screenshots on itch don't really bring that to mind, though. So Ryan, I think we were chatting briefly. You said you did have a chance to try this one.
Yeah, I did, because I really love Minesweeper. I think it's a fabulous game. And when I heard that, I thought, oh, I got to give this a try. So I downloaded it, played it just a bit, and it is Minesweeper-like. However, if you've played Minesweeper before, you know that a tile will have a number on it. And that number corresponds with the number of adjacent mines. So that can be anywhere from 0 to 8 mines. You know how there's up, down, left, right, and then secondary cardinal
diagonals.
Directions. Yeah. This one, on the other hand, lets you know what's up, down, left, right, not diagonal, but those cards near you can have not one, but multiples. Basically, you're trying to figure out the numbers that are adjacent to you. So there could be a number 2 next to you and a number 1 above you, and then the card would read 3, and you have to figure out which ones are around. So I'm used to, in my mind, understanding that each occupied space around the card I'm looking at is 1. And so this orientation kind of bent my mind, and I was having a difficult time strategizing. It felt like there was more options than I could reason out, but maybe that's just because I've played it for such a short time right now. Maybe some strategy will come to me as I continue playing this. But anyway, that was my initial impression, only having come at it from a history of Minesweeper.
Okay. Um, what did you think of the overall package? Is it fun? Like, do you see yourself going back to it, or um, do you really feel that the poll is the Minesweeper nostalgia and feelings there?
Um, I think I would like to give this another go or three.
Okay.
I right now I'm in that sort of liminal state where I'm in between learning it and super understanding it to the point where I feel like maybe there's some strategy there that I'm not grasping quite yet, or some reasoning or puzzle solving I'm not getting immediately. So I want
Okay.
to really try it out a few more times.
Give
I feel
give
like
it
it
some
deserves
time.
it. What's
Yeah.
that?
Give it some time.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Cool. So indie inventory, Ryan.
All
What do you
right.
got?
Let's see here. I'm going to start things out with Hero Blast. And this is a name your price game that is billed as an arcade high score chaser. So you shoot some bouncing balls and avoid being hit. And this was just released yesterday. So very new. I
Whoa.
have not
Okay.
downloaded it, nor have I played it. So I'm going to assume you have not either. Is that correct, Nick?
Correct. That
Okay.
is correct.
Then on to my next indie inventory pick. It's called D Paddle versus Crankette.
I
And
looked at this and thought about putting it on here myself, but
you gave it a good think. Okay.
I did.
So the title treatment for this game, and I'm gonna get all fonty on you in the absence of Don, because the title sort of highlights D-pad all versus crank at. So it's like D-pad versus crank, and essentially this is a two-player Pong game for the Playdate with D-pad controls for player one and crank controls for player two. I have pulled a Nick on this one. I downloaded it and have not played it, but I
Okay.
hope to play this with my son. It sounds like a cool two-player game. I love finding two-player simultaneous games that I can play with my son. So we'll probably give this a try at some point. So maybe I can report back and let you know how it goes.
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool. And then finally, let's see what else we got. Oh, last on my list is Crank Games. This is a name your own price game, as was Deep Tattle and Crankette. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. That was also a name your own price game. So this is billed as two short games for the Playdate, both primarily using the crank. And on one of the games, it names an angle between 0 and 360, and you're supposed to swing your crank around to that particular angle as best you can. And then it lets you know how far away you were from that angle, and also your best of all time. So you can kind of compare how accurate you were on not only that particular try, but of all time. And then the second game is a clock, and it's not naming a time for you to go to. You're supposed to move the crank at the pace of a second's hand. So you're moving around at, 60 seconds. You're supposed to do one rotation. And that's
That
pretty
would be
much it.
very difficult.
Yeah, two little mini games, and that's it for Crank Games. Nick, any
Sounds
thoughts on
sounds
Crank
cool.
Games?
Yeah, sounds cool. Like I say, that second one sounds very, very difficult. But pretty neat.
Yeah,
Good
yeah. So
ideas.
for name your own price, not too shabby.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
So Ryan, you know what this means?
it means indie games of the week.
We're here. Ryan, tell me
Nicholas.
what you got.
Oh, am I going first?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm excited about this one. This is by Oscar Braindead, and it's called One Bit Jetpack. And
Okay.
um, basically, you are a little astronaut, and you are trying to assemble three parts of a ship. And once you do that, then you need to fuel it up. So there's 6 fuel packs that you need to grab and then sort of insert into the ship. The mechanics of this are pretty interesting. You move your little jetpack guy around the screen using the D-pad. You can also shoot by pressing the A button, and you can jump by pressing the B button. And by jump, I mean use your jetpack in a vertical orientation. So basically, up on the D-pad is the same as the B button. I think the B button is pretty much superfluous, but I mention all this because I'm going to get to a comment that was left on the 1-bit jetpack page in a moment or three here. So it says you can go through the margins of the screen, which means on the left and right side, it loops. So your character goes out the left side and comes back out the right side. The enemies cannot do that. So it's a nice way to sort of get away from your enemies if you need to. The way you assemble these pieces of the ship and also the fuel packs is also kind of interesting. You run over the thing, it attaches to you, and then you simply hover over the base of the ship, and then it drops into place. So you don't have to press anything to pick it up or to release it. It's just based on your approximation to the piece. So I thought that was really interesting. And whether you're up high or down low, it still drops it if you're across that vertical line. So there's a bunch of different features to this. There's 6 types of enemies, 4 types of power-ups, which I have not even mentioned yet. So you have a POW you can grab. And I think the POWs are really fantastic, actually, because they give you stuff that actually matters. Like you can double shoot, like instead of shooting one direction, just left or just right, it shoots out both directions, which when you have these multiple enemies is really handy. It can also give you an extra life, which is super handy. It can kill everything on the screen, also super great. And the 4th power up is to freeze everything on the screen, which buys you a little bit of breathing room. So I think the power ups were very well conceived. I think they're super useful. It says that there's random platform level generation too. So there's platforms to sort of hinder your jetpack trips around the screen. And it's interesting to have those going on. High score saving credits to continue the game. And also, it's got a number of different level difficulties. So when you start on the first mode, I think it's easy. I can't remember exactly what they're all called, but it starts with generating 2 enemies. And then after a certain period of time, 2 more enemies generate. Or if you kill the 2 enemies, then immediately 2 enemies generate. As you increase in the levels of difficulty, there's 4 different levels of difficulty. There's 1 additional enemy generation for each of those additional levels of difficulty. So the next one up is 3, next 4, and final is 5. So the screen can get really occupied and pretty difficult when you start ramping that difficulty up. I did not find it impossible at that top level, but it really does keep you moving and keep you on your toes. I found that in order to keep the levels going longer, I could shoot out most of the enemies, but not the last one. Because remember, when you shoot out all of your enemies, then X number of enemies regenerate. If you're on the difficult level, gives you 5 more instantly. Whereas you have a certain period of time in between enemy generation if any enemies still are on the screen. I thought that was an interesting and fun way to strategize on this game.
Yeah.
And really just enjoyed my time quite a bit on this. I felt like the varying levels of difficulty even gave it some longer legs than I thought it already had. And I wanted to take a moment to address a comment that I saw on the itch page. So this is coming from Low Tech Games, who developed Tapeworm Disco Party. So this is not coming from no one. This is coming from someone who knows what they're doing. And he said, hey, this is a nice level of polish, but my initial thought is that the buttons are the wrong way around. B should be shoot and A should be jump, like in Mario. And I started thinking about that and played the game again after reading that. And I disagree. I think in a different way, because I think that B button, I think the jump button is largely superfluous, as I said in the beginning, because you can use the up direction on the D-pad to do the same thing. So really, I never use the B button. I never use the jump button, but I do use the A button, the fire button, a lot because you need to. So I felt like having the fire button on the outer button allowed me to move my hands apart from one another a little bit more and feel a little bit more comfortable in the control holds. So I was a little disappointed when I read the follow-up comment from Oscar Braindead, the developer of this game. And he said, interesting. You can fly by pressing up on the D-pad, like I mentioned. In fact, I use the up direction to fly. Yep, me too. But it's a good idea. And I'll change the button assignment and I'll put an option in the system menu to switch between them. Thanks.
Yeah,
So
I think that's a great compromise. What makes you disappointed in that?
I guess the fact that makes me disappointed is that he's making the default the other way around instead of keeping this button
That
orientation as the
I,
default and allowing you to switch over. But ultimately, I guess that's a small inconvenience. But I personally am not one to get into options very often. I guess that's what disappointed me a little bit, is that I would have to do that if I wanted to switch back to this button orientation.
okay. Well, I mean, I think Lotec has a point there that that's what people are going to expect. I think the um, idea of having an accessible option that allows you to switch between the developer's preferred or first choice for control setup and then kind of the expected control setup. I think that's just a great compromise, and it makes a lot of sense. So, on the contrary to your on the contrary, uh, I feel like that's a great thing, and it's cool that the developers listening to feedback, especially from other developers who obviously play a lot of games and support the platform a lot. So, makes sense to me.
Totally. And
However, I will throw this huge caveat out there. I haven't played this game yet, so um,
that's what I was going to follow up with, essentially. So first of all, Oscar Braindead, so cool that he was on the ball very quickly after this comment. In fact, responded the same day. I'm not sure if there's been a change in the download file yet, because the version that I had was downloaded a couple days after the suggestion and still has that old button orientation. So maybe it has not been changed yet. All that to say, I initially read this comment before playing the game and felt the same way you do. And then I played the game and now I feel differently. So I will be interested to hear your thoughts if you do decide to download and play this game.
Yeah, I think in principle, my thought won't change. But as far as my feeling for which control scheme is appropriate, I'll have the option, so it won't really matter. And I do dive into options, so that's on me, I guess. But
all right, cool. So very good showing by Oscar Braindead from this past week. 1-bit jetpack. I'd highly recommend it. It seems like it'd be a really fun score chaser. So maybe we'll have to add a sub-thread
channel.
Yeah,
Yeah,
on our Hello Playdate Discord.
Sounds good.
All right. What are you looking at this week for indie games of the week, Nick?
Ryan, how do you like existential dread? A lot?
Can I not like that?
Everybody's favorite. So I kind of struggled with whether or not to highlight this game because it is a challenging game. It's a game that makes you confront issues of mortality and permanence and all those kind of things. But I thought it would be good to highlight because I couldn't stop playing or thinking about it over the past couple of weeks. It's called You're Gonna Die, which
sounds fun.
It sure does. It is free, and it's on itch, of course. You start off and you awaken as a robot on a charging pad, and it is a pulpy adventure game. So just my kind of thing. But you quickly realize that this is a very different kind of game with a very different kind of message. Um, there's nothing particularly um, bad about it, or challenging directly about it. It's a game that requires a bit of thought, but there are uh, messages of futility and all that kind of thing. So one of the goals within requires you to um, collect a bunch of a particular item that requires going back and forth over multiple screens in order to place them, and your robot starts to feel, what's the point? Um, so the robot is all alone, and that plays a part in everything that they do as well. So they come across, for example, a scarecrow on one screen, and they start talking to it, and of course the scarecrow does not answer back because it's a scarecrow. So that's kind of sad. There's all kinds of interesting and sad messages woven throughout. And the end of the game, there are multiple endings. But as far as I know, the game actually, this is a minor spoiler, the game never ends. So it is very intriguing to me, just this particular game design. So anyway, I tried all kinds of stuff and just experimented like crazy to see if I could really change what was going to happen inevitably. It's in the title. So it's an interesting game, and I really enjoyed it in spite of the very morose messaging and themes. So the developer mentioned that they had made a non-Playdate version of this game previous, and it was so depressing that they they don't have many links to it on the web anymore. But
Yeah, I see
there
in the
it
description that he said that I've tried to make this game more engaging and less depressing than the one I made before.
yeah. I think somewhere in the comments on the itch page there is a link to the original. But anyway, if this sounds at all interesting to you, and it definitely takes a specific mindset to want to give this a shot, but once you're in there, I think it's an interesting playthrough, and it's pretty short. So it's worth a look, I think, but it might not be for everybody. So
Yeah, and it looks like this came out about half a year ago.
yeah,
This is not a recent release, so you might have to look this up by name or just click on
in the
that
show
link
notes.
in the show notes. Yep.
Yeah. So that's the indie game of the week for me, and with that, this is like record time.
I was going to say, are we done? This isn't done, is it? What are we
I
going to
believe
talk about, Nick?
we might have run all the way through this.
I feel like we're between a rock and a hard place. Don is going to be so disappointed, one, that the episode was so short, or two, we could always talk about ourselves.
Well, we could, but you know what else we could talk about, Ryan?
What's that?
The Playdate.
Hey, how about it?
So, Ryan, out of curiosity, have you put any thought into doing any more creative work on the Playdate? I know you had mentioned in a much earlier episode that you had poked around in pulp, and I know that things are incredibly busy for you, as they are for me at the moment. But I was just curious if you'd had any more thoughts about ways that you could interface with this yellow box.
Yeah, the game I was working on, I got a screen or two built in pulp, and I was pretty proud of what I put together so far, but I have not done much work since talking about it several episodes ago. I've been kind of hunkered down and working on my latest book, which is on its way to me right now. Um, so I don't have any more information for you. I don't know if I will get back to it, when or if. Um, and so I don't have much to report, but I feel like this is really an opportunity for me to ask you, how are you interfacing with the Playdate, Nick? Are you working on any games?
I am. So
Ah,
I have a game that's in um, the planning phases. I've reached out and I've hired a composer,
uh-huh.
um, and have given them the scope of the project and some details about what I want, but I still need to finish the planning of the rest of the game in order to um, flesh out exactly what they're going to be composing, um, how many tunes, duration, those kind of things.
Hmm.
Um, so that is going well, and I'm very excited to release more information about that soon. Um, but at the moment, I'm working on uh, engine is the wrong word, but I'm working on the actual program itself, just a proof of concept. So I have the planning for the scenario and everything that I want to happen broadly, but um, there are a number of interactables that I need to flesh out. So I'm taking kind of the liminal space between other projects and things that I'm working on and building out the programming, um, moving things around and poking them and making them react, those kind of things.
So can you tell us a little bit more about the game itself? Is it a pulpy adventure game? Is it a puzzle game? Is it a platformer? What sort of thing are you working on?
It is an adventure game. It is not a pulpy adventure game. It's quite different in feel. So you are not directly controlling a character in the same way that you would be in, say, any of the pulp games, or like the game that I highlighted. You're gonna die. uh, it's a very different style of game, and one that hasn't had a direct um, similar game on the Playdate, but it has on other platforms. So when I finish the planning and I kind of firm up some of the other details, then I'll be able to talk more about what's involved. But at the moment, I'm working in Lua. I started the game in C, and then decided to try Lua just for speed of development. Um, but I'm I'm liking the Lua pretty okay. So
A ringing
I've
endorsement.
I'm not huge into Lua. I've I've only toyed around with it back when I played World of Warcraft for like 6 months, a long time ago. You could write extensions to your interface in Lua, and that's about all the experience that I have with it, is just poking around in extensions and writing my own little things that did different stuff. Um, from a structural standpoint, the language is it's a little different than what I'm used to, even with other scripting languages. So it just takes a little getting used to. But I will say the SDK itself, the framework that Panic has developed that sits over top of it, or underneath of it, is really really nice, and gives you access to everything on the Playdate. So the only trick with Lua is performance. With C, you get much better performance, but the penalty is that you have to keep track of things in a much more nuanced way. So Lua automates some stuff for you. So it's a little faster to prototype and develop with Lua than it is with C, even with the conveniences of the framework.
So what sort of a timeline are we looking at here? When do you think we're going to see the Baldrigian Playdate game? 1.0?
Well, so the big wrench in this is that I'm about to start production on my next pinball game, and this is the most ambitious game that I've ever made, and it is going to consume a tremendous amount of my time. Already is. So I'm not sure.
So you better hurry up and finish this Playdate game. Stat.
That's kind of. I thought I might actually have enough time to get a huge chunk of this done, but I have not. So
I had a feeling that was your feeling.
Yeah.
When you said this in our private chat, I'm like, oh my God, Nick, you got to be kidding me with this.
Yeah. I've spent a lot of time doing PR type work for the new pinball game, and that's about to be announced. So that's exciting. And then the other thing is this Playdate game. I am really excited to have this as kind of a bite-sized project between massive projects. So developing pinball games is a huge undertaking, and it requires a lot of discipline, both from a time management perspective, but also from a planning and coordination perspective and playtesting perspective. I mean, there's so much involved in making pinball. It's even if you're doing just a software only application that uses a different playfield, which is something that you can do. It's just a ton of work. So on the Playdate, though, it's so much easier because you can playtest yourself. The scope of things is typically much smaller. You don't have a ball bearing made of steel crashing around and smashing things that you make. So you don't have to make geometrical tweaks or anything like that. It is a breath of fresh air as far as speed of development. So I've already got an interface working and things happening, and I've got my terrible graphics rolling on there. But it's pretty impressive how quickly I was able to get that going.
Yeah, that is cool. You asked me about my little foray into maybe doing something on Pulp, and part of me enjoyed that, and part of me wants to get back to it. But another part of me is not incredibly excited about the way in which you have to tile together images like backgrounds and various elements of the game. It's really clunky if you want to make some sort of larger image. And basically you're working with these little, 8x8 or 16x16 pixel tiles, and you have to like individually draw those tiles and then put them into place rather than think about a larger composition and then, I'm going to make this larger image by drawing like a normal person instead of like getting down to a shower tile's worth of information for an entire shower's worth of wall.
Right.
So that aspect of arting for the Playdate on Pulp was a little discouraging to me. And I think I was trying to do things that Pulp was not meant to do. So I don't know. If I ever decide to get back to it, I might, pester you a little bit and see if I can twist your arm into doing some coding, because that's the part that I just am not excited about at all. I want to do art, but I don't know coding from anything. So, maybe if you need another palette cleanser, we can add that to our mountain of collaborative projects.
Yeah, that'd be fun, and depending on what you want to do, so we'd have to discuss that. But
Sure.
yeah, I think it'd be neat to have releases from my company on the Playdate as well as pinball and even some video stuff I have planned. So there's no shortage of things to do, but it is very exciting to be able to put something out in the world. And I think the Playdate is such a neat device in that it removes so much of the extraneous choice. That's a bad word to use, but so many of the choices needed to create a compelling experience, and it helps you drill down to just core gameplay aspects because you're not focused on which shade of red this happens to be out of 62 million.
Would you
or
like the
however many.
shade called black or the shade called white?
Right. Yeah. So it's a lot easier to just work on gameplay elements and not focus on how your graphics are smashing into each other all the time. So from my perspective as a non-graphics person, so or a non-art person, I should say.
Cool.
So yeah.
Well, I look forward to knowing more about this when it is ready. Are you going to be doing the graphics for this as well?
Undecided.
Okay.
I've done some placeholder stuff. I guess I can tease that it's related to a pinball game that I've made previously. So it's a prequel to a pinball game.
4 of those.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, more if you count those homebrews.
Yes.
Brings it up to 6 or so, or 200, depending upon how you count those.
It's a prequel to Double Up, the bingo. No, it's not. It's a prequel to one of my flipper games. But anyway, yeah, more in time.
Okay, you tease. Well, until then, should we sign off?
I think so.
Okay.
Good to talk with you, Ryan. And
you too, Nick. It's nice to be back.
Yeah. Don, we missed you. If you would like to find us on the web, we're at playdatepodcast.com. And we have a Discord. Check it out. We hang out and we talk about games and my poor memory sometimes. You can email us at helloplaydatepodcast@gmail.com. Find us on Instagram at hellopplaydate.
And you can also call us on the boop line at 724 bingos 1. That's 724-246-4671.
All right. And
don't all write me, Nick Baldridge.
Well, thanks, Ryan. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you next time.
Nick, good to see you. Bye-bye, everyone.